morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
When you live a life beyond where the pavement ends and your world is made up of horses, cattle, some machinery, and good partners, the adventures that you collect make for amazing stories. And we'll bring you a bunch of them today, from cowboys, cattle handling experts, large animal vets, and psychologists.
And those cattle were getting on that highway, and they hit several of them, and so they decided to move the wagon up to a place near the highway, and we'd gather that country to get those cattle off that highway.
And Baxter Black barely casts a shadow, and with his clothes on, he probably weighs about 155. And it would be less if he shaved off his mustache. But he'll tell us about a diet that he tried.
Based on my meager experience, if you're a person who doesn't need to go on a diet, this might be a good diet for you not to go on.
Now, we have quite a few friends and neighbors who run yearling operations, buying steers in the spring, selling them in the early fall, and the Rangeland News takes a hard look at prices for this fall and next year.
Deer prices this year are expected to average $5 a hundredweight less than 2017.
The Cowboy Poetry Spotlight features Tom Swearington and the highest compliment a cowboy can receive.
One to ride the river with. That's his reputation. The kind you can depend on in that situation.
On the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, I watched some great performance horses recently, but I noticed that almost every one of them had the same problem, and I'll tell you what it is. Another look back at a classic Song of the West, a story from the roping psychologist Dr. Michael Johnson coming right up, and you know, it's been really hot in the south. Phoenix was around 120 degrees, and even up in Prescott, the heat is really there, and it's dry, so we'll try and send them something they really need.
There's a rumble across the valley, so loud it shakes the window panes. Thunder heads across the sky, rolling like an ocean's tide. It's an Arizona rain. Winds are twisting and a turning, dust is swirling up the lane. Now I'm pulling up a chair, watch the master clear the air. It's an Arizona rain. With every drop of moisture I see a brighter green, and all life here is depending on that Arizona rain. Cattle calling in the distance, huddled up beneath the trees. My old horse is standing there soaking wet, but he don't care. It's an Arizona rain. I can smell the rain for miles, sweeter than a breath of spring. Though the skies are dark and gray, it's gonna brighten up my day. It's an Arizona rain. And with every drop of moisture I see a brighter green, and all life here is dependent on that Arizona rain. I got a pot of coffee boiling as lightning streaks across the range. Now I'm sitting in my chair, watch the master clear the air. It's an Arizona rain.
Well, that song really relates closely to our classic Song of the West that you'll hear just before the end of the show. And what a songwriter he is. That was Arizona cowboy John Hargett, and sadly he rode over the Great Divide October the 4th, 2015 at the young age of 61. And in his career, John toured Canada as the opening act for the late Don Williams, and he had a passion for cowboy life, and he lived it to the fullest, and he made a lot of trips to Canada to shoe horses for his friends on the chuck-wagging circuit. And as far as I know, that's the only CD that John ever recorded, and it is terrific. And now, some thoughts from Dr. Michael Johnson, the roping psychologist.
People see my cowboy hats, they often ask, "Oh, do you have horses? Do you own horses?" I think about that question a lot. My horses don't clean up my bathroom. They never buy me any feed. They don't take me to the doctor when I'm sick. They don't seem worried about whether I can back up or not. The only thing they really seem interested in is what time we're going to eat. Every morning at 7, they nicker and whinny and snort and stomp and paw, and they seem to be saying, "Where's the oats? Yo, Michael, could we get some oats over here? How about some of that alfalfa? We're out of salt. Dad, could we get a couple of salt blocks out here?" My 3 roping horses will stand there and eat like a bunch of pigs. I have yet for one of them to say, "Hey, Dad, this sure is good. Brr, thank you for getting all this." Do I own horses? Do I have horses? No. They have me. They own me. It's hard to describe how I feel about them. Like Jane Tompkins said, try to imagine the Lone Ranger without Silver. My life would be so much less if they weren't in it. My wife has a big head horse, and we call him Old Paint. He's 12, and he's had about 10,000 steers roped off of him. He's a journeyman and the best roping teacher I ever had. He's a good rope horse, but he does have a few problems. When you miss a steer, Old Paint shakes all over. He's scared you're going to whip him, which I guess the people did who owned him before he came to our farm. When I miss a steer on him, I never raise my voice. I can tell he's afraid, and I just pet him and say, "It's not your fault, partner. It was mine." Old Paint don't like people much. He doesn't want you to pet him, and he rarely makes eye contact. He's not mean, but you can tell. He's bitter at humans. He has good reason to be, I suppose. I've learned something those fellows who owned him before apparently didn't know. When my horse does something wrong, on almost every occasion, it's because of me. And finally, there's little Blue. He's a 2-year-old baby in the color of a pencil lead. Strange how he came into our lives, and because he was so beautiful and so well-bred, we had high hopes for him. We raised him from a tiny baby, and we knew that he was going to be a good one. Naturally, he turned out to be a straight idiot. I mean, this horse would make Santa nervous. He picks the handkerchief out of my back pocket, he slips up behind me, snaps my hat off my head, runs across the pasture with it. Oh, he always brings it back. He's driving me crazy. People ask me, "Do you train your own horses?" I think about that question a lot. Do I train my horses? I've learned so many things from them. Maybe it's better said that they train me. I've learned that no matter what happens to us in life, we're not to be bitter. When we are, we miss so much. And from old Shine, I've learned that looks aren't everything, and whining will get you nowhere. Doing your part does. Appreciating what you have does. Hard work does.
Next, a large animal vet remembers saving twin calves at 3 in the morning when the temperature was 40 below, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Dr. Dave Perrin has written a pile of best-selling books about his long career as a large animal vet, and a while back he told me about a cold winter night. He'd finally gotten to bed well after midnight after dealing with a lot of calving emergencies, and he was chilled to the bone when the phone rang again. And it was another emergency.
I can remember getting out there, and it was a set of twins on this one. And the twins were so jammed up together that the guy reached in and all he could feel was feet. And when he got there...
An 8-footed calf.
That's right. Yeah. I know that I don't know what I'm going to do about it, but all I know is that you better call Dave, because there's no way it's going to come out the way it is. You know, so I got out there and I sorted out this one, and of course by the time it was a calf that was coming in difficult presentation, and by the time I got it out, it was already to the point where it was almost dead. And I really had to work on this calf to get it going, and of course the whole time Lynn Hornsleen was getting to the point where she was more and more worried that this calf wasn't going to make it, and we were sticking the straws up its nose and breathing in its nose, and finally it It was one of those calves where the heartbeat is still going, but it wouldn't take the breath to get going. And we started stimulating it with hot and cold water and straw up the nose and blowing it down its nostril, and finally got him started. And by the time we went on to do the second one, this one was, almost the point where it was sitting up. Lynn was excited, she had adrenaline running. She already wanted to get a pair of calves, a pair of twins out of this thing. So she was sitting there with this bucket of ice water, ready to pour
it on the calf to start it breathing as soon as it's out.
Because she was convinced that the second one was going to be every bit as difficult as the first one. Well, of course, this was a huge cow, and we're talking calves that were probably in the 60-pound range, so that they, a big Charolais cow like that just
one contraction and it's going to go across the yard.
That's what happened. As it was, I got in there and I went to get the chains on this thing, and the calf was coming so well that I just went to pull this thing, and of course my hands were still numb. They weren't working. It was still 40 below, and I gave a yank on these calves' feet, and of course the calf did come out, and I was juggling to try and make sure that the calf didn't just fall on the ground. So as it ended up, I fell over backwards. The calf landed on top of me, but Lynn was so excited about getting this water on there that she whooshed this whole bucket of ice-cold water over the calf, and of course the calf was right on top of me. So
thank you, Lynn.
We both ended up with this tremendous.
You both started breathing again. Right?
Oh yeah, he was breathing quick right away, and so was I. And I finally got up. By the time I got to my feet, I was already. My pants were frozen. So here I was. We finally got everything worked out with the cow, and I wandered my way back to the car like a kid with his pants full of poop, because he couldn't walk. I was totally frozen up and iced up.
Well, next, cattle handling expert Dylan Biggs with a wreck he was in with a bull and his horse. And rodeo legend Bob Robinson has a story from the rodeo road after this one from Texas cowboy singer Gil Prather.
Ride on, cowboy, ride on. The campfires have died. Ride on, cowboy, ride on to the roundup in the sky. Ride on, cowboy, ride on. Your day has passed you by. Where else can a cowboy go when he knows deep down in his soul his way of life has seen its day, and all cowboys, they'll just fade away? If a cowboy has no range to roam, he'll have to find another home. The only place is in the sky where he can ride, he can ride, he can ride. Ride on, cowboy, ride on. The campfires have died. Ride on, cowboy, ride on to the roundup in the sky. Ride on, cowboy, ride on. Your day has passed you by. It's nearly time to lay me down, so take me home to the Rio Grande, there where the river rushes by. Bury me high enough so that I can fly. with golden eagles, and in the way they lead me to the pearly gates. They're at the roundup in the sky. I can ride, I can ride, I can ride. Ride on, cowboy. Ride on, the campfires have died. Ride on, cowboy. Ride on to the roundup in the sky. Ride on, cowboy. Ride on, your day has passed you by. Ride on, your day has passed you by.
Beautiful song, but let's hope that doesn't come true. One of Canada's top livestock handling experts, Dylan Biggs, told me about an episode he had late in the summer pulling bulls.
One of the injuries that I had working stock was in fact pulling a bull. And I was on a horse that really liked to work cattle, but he, as it turned out, would get, once I got him pressured up a little bit, he got to the point where he wasn't 100% comfortable. And we were pulling this old black bull out of this bunch of cows. And we were going back and forth a few times at fairly good speed. And that horse made one turn, and he'd take one crow hop as he was turning to come back on that bull, and we had too much speed going. Next thing you know, I was coming out of that saddle, and I just came right out of the saddle instead of fighting it, but I landed so hard down on my heel, and I popped my ankle, broke my bone, and had to have it screwed back together. But the thing about it is that injuries, 90% of them, I'd say, or 95% of them, are as a result of pressuring these cattle up too much, not taking our time, not doing the required steps to get that animal to where you want it.
Now see if you can picture this. Two cowboys wearing Spirit of the West t-shirts sitting on the balcony of a luxury cruise ship somewhere in the Caribbean. Well, that was the scene when I recorded a conversation with rodeo legend Bob Robinson during our Spirit of the West cruise, and when I asked him for a couple of road stories, he gave us these two.
One time we used to get a room, a kitchenette. We'd be in, say, in San Antonio or somewhere, and we'd get a kitchenette, and we'd buy groceries and cook. And one day, this friend of mine, it's Jim Tesher. Jim was cooking, so they had them big rubber sink stoppers, and so he cooked this up in a nice pancake dough and gave it to Lyle Smith. And of course, Lyle, he then poured his butter on there and his syrup, and he got his knife out, and he went to cutting on this pancake, and all of a sudden he saw that red stink stopper in there. He said, "Jim," he said, "what is this?" But that was and then this other guy, Martinelli, the Jim Tesher, they used to throw each other into the pool. He'd catch a guy and throw you into the pool with all your clothes on. So Martinelli, he runs in there and puts Jim's pants on. And then Jim grabbed him and threw him in the pool. And it was...
He's wearing his own pants.
So, yeah, he had Jim's pants.
His own pants into the pool.
Yeah, threw his own pants into the pool. So.
And it's great to see that Bob and Peggy will be on our Spirit of the West cruise to the Maritimes and New England coming up this September. Baxter Black talks about his weight loss program and the Cowboys all-meat diet. And Montana's high country cowboys have a pretty good cowboy song. Then it's the Rangeland News, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan with a little peek at the all-meat cowboy diet. Ladies and gentlemen and followers of cowboy humor, I have carved another book from my funny bone, guaranteed to tickle your humorous. The title is Scrambled Wisdom. Almost isn't is it? Which almost makes sense. Regardless, it's almost $20, only $19.95 plus shipping. Call 800-654-2550 or online at baxterblack.com. Here's a joke. What did he get on his IQ test? Drool. The all-meat, all-fat cowboy diet. That's what I call it, and it's spawned 2 bestsellers, Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution and Protein Power. Well, I became aware of this unusual diet through some cattlemen friends of mine, heavy men who had each lost 30 pounds or more using it, and their cholesterol had gone down. And the interesting part was that you could eat all the meat and eggs and cheese and butter you wanted. For the sake of science, I decided I'd put myself on this diet and see what happened. First, I went to the doctor and had my cholesterol checked, and then I went and had breakfast for the first time since 1973. Big breakfast, 3-egg omelet, rare bacon and sausage, but no toast, no jelly, no donut, no hash browns, and no syrup. But I filled up. For supper, we had roast beef. I ate the salad, the guacamole, the green beans, the roast beef, the cottage cheese, the paper napkin, and the plastic fork, but no baked potato, no gravy, no hot rolls, and no chocolate 4-layer cake. After 6 weeks of eating like a pig, I weighed 154 pounds. I had lost 4 pounds. I was impressed. The diet really worked. And then I checked my cholesterol. The total was up 21 points. Well, I kept at it and stayed the course. I ate rashers of bacon, baskets of eggs, kilos of cheese, and lockers of beef, but no candy, tortillas, pinto beans, rice or chocolate chip cookies, and I felt great. 12 weeks into the diet, I checked my cholesterol again, now up 40 points to 171. The good cholesterol was down 10%, and the bad cholesterol was up 42 points, and my heart attack risk ratios were going the wrong way. I called my cardiologist and read him the results, and he said, "What's that sound?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "It sounds like plaque troweling itself inside cardiac arteries." So I quit the diet. 4 months later, my cholesterol counts are back where they were. I'm eating tacos, hamburgers, chocolate candy, pecan pie, hot fudge, and Wonder Bread, but I'm still eating the fat off the prime rib and the pigs in a blanket. Oh, and I've gained the 4 pounds back, plus some. So in conclusion, this is a great diet for carnivores, a boon to those of us in the red meat business, and it's making MDs rethink human nutrition. But based on my meager experience, if you're a person who doesn't need to go on a diet, this might be a good diet for you not to go on. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan. Thanks for listening.
Well, these 3 riding, singing, saddle-building Montana brothers will be appearing at the 14th Annual Roundup Ride in Roundup, Montana next week, July the 3rd. And they'll be worth hearing for sure. They are, of course, the High Country Cowboys.
Sun is rising and the roundup time is nigh. Time to round up all them doggies, rope and brand their hides. Saddle up your old cow pony, pull the cinch up good and tight. Build a branding fire, get it burning nice and bright. Ooh, build a loop and rope a stray. Ooh, there's a lot of work to be done today. Dally up that calf and dragon through the sagebrush and the sand, for the work will not be over till each doggie wears a brand. Steps in a chuck hole and sends you for a spin, and that ornery old caballo won't let you catch him again. And when you finally catch him, you're feeling stiff and sore, but you climb back in the saddle and ride out to rope some more. Ooh, oh, the sun is hot and bright. Ooh, and this tired cowboy can't wait till night when the stars come shining softly and the sky turns dark and blue, and the cowboys round the campfire sing of when the roundup's through.
News of the rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
At the top of page 1, it says, grass is looking pretty good in our part of the West so far this year, and a lot of our neighbors and friends have yearling steers on their pastures and ranges, planning to sell them early in the fall when they hit about 1,000 pounds or maybe a little bit less. Now, supplies are high, but apparently so is demand. Here's Gary Crawford.
Are beef cattle prices finally bottoming out and on the way up again? There are signs of that in USDA's latest forecasts. On the surface, those numbers might suggest another drop in steer prices next year. After all, beef production keeps rising from a bit over 26 billion pounds last year up to a projected 27.7 next year. However, USDA Outlook Board Chairman Seth Meyer says beef demand seems to be growing domestically. Beef exports are up. Steer prices this year are expected to average $5 a hundredweight less than 2017 at about $116. But next year,
we'll get an increase in prices of about $1.70 going into 2019 to $117.75 next year.
Kind of unusual when supplies are going to be larger.
So there is some support there in terms of overall demand despite the increase in supplies.
The problem for producers could be projected higher feed prices next year. Corn, for example, projected up over 14%. The steer price increase only 1.5%. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
Lab-grown meat startups that rely on animal cells to produce beef, poultry, and seafood products have caught the eye of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, which has begun the process of regulating that industry. Cultured meat, considered an environmentally sound alternative to the real thing, is made by harvesting cells from animals and growing them to make food. And companies like Memphis Meats, Inc. and Future Meat Technologies have piqued the interest of investors such as food giants Tyson Foods and Cargill, as well as billionaires Bill Gates and Richard Branson. So the FDA plans to hold a meeting on July the 12th to get input from the industry on the safety of the technology, as well as considerations for how to possibly label a product so consumers know they're getting meat from a lab, not from a cow. And there have been some debate over whether the FDA or the USDA should regulate lab-grown meat. Is it a big dog? Is it a coyote? Is it a wolf? What is it? A canine creature considered to be a threat to livestock around Denton, Montana last month has been definitely identified as a gray wolf from the northern Rockies. Confusion about the animal might be due to the condition of the animal and the photos that seem to show short legs and big ears. Inspection of the animal, though, at the Montana Fish and Wildlife and Parks Wildlife Health Lab in Bozeman revealed a relatively normal-looking dark brown wolf. Measured 45 inches from the tip of the nose to the rump and weighed 84.5 pounds, and it was estimated to be about 2 or maybe 3 years old. Wolves are pretty common in Montana. According to the 2017 Montana Gray Wolf Program Annual Report, population estimates suggest there are about 900 wolves in the state, and this marks the 13th consecutive year that Montana has far exceeded wolf recovery goals. And property owners in Montana have a broad legal authority to shoot wolves they feel might be a threat to the livestock, as was the case with this wolf near Denton. And here's an eyebrow raiser. David Moses and his University of California San Francisco colleagues recently published research on a neuroprosthesis that can monitor brain activity in people and decode brain waves into text as the user hears specific phrases. It has some promising potential, for example, stroke victims who have lost their ability to speak. And this exciting research could revolutionize communication, and it also brings up some ethical questions to consider, such as neuroprosthetics becoming more commonplace. And Moses sees it as a positive future. He says, I think it'll be possible to develop systems that can truly help people who are unable to communicate while also safeguarding the privacy of the mind. Ooh, wow, that's kind of scary. Well, the amazing Western Spirit Band is on the road again. We'll be at the 42nd Annual Ivan Daines Country Music Picnic in August. That goes August 9th to the 12th at the Daines Rodeo Ranch near Innisfail. Jim and Mike and I look forward to seeing you there. And then we will be at Old McDonald's Music Festival. Happens September 7th and 8th at Old McDonald's Farm near Erskine, Alberta. The only way you can get tickets there is by calling this number, 403-742-6603. Next regular livestock sale at the BC Livestock Co-op Kamloops Yards is July the 10th. The next one at Williams Lake is July the 19th, and then July 20th in Vanderhoof, and you can get all the details and the schedule on the sales at bclivestock.bc.ca. Meanwhile, over at the Innisfail Auction Market, long-time, well-run family operation, regular cattle sales every Wednesday, and there are still a few late calving bred cows coming through. They start around 9 a.m. Get all the details at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. And I guess we're at the final item. And it was a little while ago that we were visiting with the grandkids, and I was, as usual, wearing my hat, my boots, and my Wranglers, and the grandkids live in the city, and they dress pretty much the way their peers do. But I mentioned to our son Spencer that, I still wear the same size waist on my jeans as I did when I was his age. I just wear them a little lower every year, and they still fit. And then he mentioned how when you get really old, you start wearing them higher and higher. And he said, Dad, when you're about 90, I bet you're going to have to pull down your zipper when you want to look out. Thanks, Spencer, and that's the Rangeland News. Coming up in the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, I'll discuss something that seemed to be missing in an otherwise good-looking group of performance horses, and a couple of cowboys, one from Wyoming and one originally from Switzerland, have stories to share when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Some more great stories are coming right up, but right now...
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
Some folks spend their springtime on a patio.
This Bellini is simply scrumptious.
That's nice, but hey, I'd rather spend it in the grandstand with the dust, mud, and roar of the crowd. And if you prefer the rodeo scene like me, head for Urban Tack and Western Wear. Boots, belts, jeans, shirts, hats, accessories, the top names, great prices, suit up in style this rodeo season. Urban's is Canada's largest Western store, easy to find at exit 305 off Highway 2 by Crossfield.
Don't just wear it, live it. Urban Tack and Western Wear.
Boy, don't miss Irvin's great big Stampede Party. That happens on July the 10th. And, oh, man, I have never seen a bigger selection of jeans anywhere in the world, I don't think, than they have there at Irvin's. Anyway, I watched a pretty good bunch of riders on some real good-looking horses recently. There were several of them in a big enclosed arena, and they were pretty good at a lot of basic stuff, lead changes, rollbacks, and all the horses seemed soft and pretty willing. Even did some sliding stops, and these folks actually rode together almost all the time, and I commented on how well their horses seemed to be doing, but one fella came over after and he said, yes, this horse is doing all right now, but the other day I tried to ride him out on the trails, just the horse and me, and he was like a different horse. Without the others around, his head was up in the air, his eyes had a worried look, and he spooked at just about everything. Maybe I need to get more aggressive when I'm riding him. Well, sometimes that might work, but I look at the big picture this way. And this might seem like quite a stretch, but in the history of warfare, there have been countries who have had compulsory military service. It was forced on young men who really had no choice. Some of these armies were filled out with paid mercenaries, too. And there are documented examples through history of armies like this falling apart in the heat of battle when things got really intense. Mass surrenders, mass desertions. On the other hand, countries whose soldiers were volunteers fighting to defend their homeland, their homes, their families, their loved ones, and a country they loved, were far more effective when the battles really got intense. They had each other's back. They'd defend their comrades at all costs. Now, a horse that's been dominated and intimidated into going through the obstacle course or doing whatever the rider demanded might be like the soldiers who were forced into battle, and the one who's been brought along in a way that always strengthens the connection to the rider, not to the environment and not to the other horses. Well, I think be the ones that will look after you when the challenges really get intense. On this journey, of course, you'll ride into situations that'll sure test the connection. But I like to look at it this way. When I'm by myself and the horse is showing lots of resistance, either because he's genuinely afraid to go any further or he's acting off of learned evasion. It can be frustration, or it can be an opportunity. And for Urban Saddles and Western Wear, that's the Horse Training File. One thing we know really helps keep our horses looking good and feeling good is that daily feeding of Hoffman's Horse Ration, and you can find out more at hoffmanshorseration.com. Now, even here in the 21st century, there still are some outfits that take a wagon out with the cattle where they're on the summer range. For some, it's just tradition, and for some, it still makes a lot of sense. The remuda is trailed along with a bed wagon and a chuck wagon. Sometimes they're pulled by pickups, but often still by teams. And Ross Knox and Ian Tyson put this together a few years back about life on the wagon. And right after the song, a Wyoming cowboy recalls his days with the wagon.
I was broke in Wickenburg in the spring of '77. Things were lean for Buffalo and me. So I called up Harold Munson over Battle Mountain Way. The TS wagon was pulling out on the 15th day of May. I was no stranger to the wagon back when I was 21. The IL, the YP, and Circle A. So I hocked my shoeing outfit. We filled that Chevy's tank. Gas was 50 cents a gallon in those days. But I outgrew the wagon, and boy, let me tell you why. Your teepee like another nap time, or your bed ain't never dry. It was nearly mid-November, for the work was finally through, and at 15 below zero, you'd outrode the wagon too. Don't you misunderstand me? There were lots of good times too. I would not change a single memory. Like the time we tied old Blackie up in Cold Coyote Creek. We were young and wild like the horses we rode. The days stretched endlessly. I outgrew the wagon, and boy, let me tell you why. Your teepee's like another nap time, or your bed ain't never dry. It was nearly mid-November, oh, the work was finally through, and at 15 below zero, you'd outgrow the wagon too. I outgrew the wagon, and boy, let me tell you why. 'Cause your teepee like another nap time, or your bed ain't never dry. It was nearly mid-November.
And at 15 below zero, you'd outgrow the wagon too. Well, lifelong Wyoming cowboy Jim Niner remembers days like that.
I can remember one time on fall round up there, it snowed on us, and Highway 212 runs across that part of Montana to Crow Agency, and it was unfenced at that time. And these cattle were still, we were in the process of weaning, and it snowed 2 or 3 feet out there on that wagon. And anyway, that highway was not fenced, and they plowed it, and the trucks were on there. This was in the 50s, late 50s, and those cattle were getting on that highway, and they hit several of them, and so they decided to move the wagon up to a place near the highway, and we'd gather that country to get those cattle off that highway. And it took us quite a bit to get the wagon out of where we were at because the snow was deep and whatnot. And then we had to go in there and shovel. Oh, I suppose there was 2.5 foot of snow on the level, and set the bed tent and the cook tent up and stuff. And old Curly'd got several bales of straw, and we broke that in the bed tent, and then put our beds on top of that, and that warmed it up, or kept the frost off of you a little bit from the bottom. But the mice moved in, and so you'd have mice running over your bed and stuff during the night. But it was that's why guys 18, 20, 21 years old like to go to the wagon, and then when your bones start aching, it's time to do something else.
Joe Rybery followed his cowboy dreams as a young fella all the way from Switzerland, and life found him running his own ranch in Alberta years after that. He had a very special horse he called TT, and the day came when Joe decided it was in TT's best interest to sell him.
But I felt it just wasn't fair keeping him, using him for the real difficult work then, of course, as you do, and not riding him all the time. So I sold him to a fella that really liked him. And then I didn't see TT for 13 years. In 1998, when I drove through the Rimby area with Antoinette, we drove by a pasture and there was a lone horse out there. And I said, "Hey, that's TT. I bet you that's TT." I stopped and I backed up and got out of the vehicle, and I walked up to the fence and I hollered. He was about 200 meters away. I hollered his name. I hollered TT, and his second time I called, his head came up and he came up to the fence, and boy, I thought he'd crawl through the fence, and tears were just running down my face. And he followed me along the whole fence after that. It was hard leaving again from there. But I found out that a fella that was team roping, he had calf roped on him, and then team roped.
Daylight fades to the dimming dusk as I leave this road behind. One more mile on a horse I trust brings a peaceful thought to mind. Who knows what the morn will bring? Hope for sunshine without fail. For now I'll hang my bridle ring and say goodnight to the trail. Good night to the trail. Good night. Good night to the trail. Good night. Days are long and the nights are short, but this time will soon be gone. I'll send some notes with a good report of how we're getting on. I don't often e'er complain, except this bread is mighty stale. I've had enough of this rough terrain, singing goodnight to the trail. Good night to the trail. Good night. Good night to the trail. Good night. takes his final ride. A new journey has begun. We'll think of him from time to time, and a new song will be sung. The moon will always light the way in its 1,000 shades of pale. Turn and give just one last wave and say goodnight to the trail. Good night to the trail. Good night. Good night to the trail. Good night. Adios.
Well, that's from a new CD by Eli Barzy and Doris Daly, Once Upon the West, and it's getting lots of attention. And I sure hope you can stick around for this week's classic Western song. It relates back to the one we started with, and then a good piece of cowboy poetry when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West, looking back at another one of those classic Western songs. This one is from the pen of Bob Nolan, and Bob had such a gift for music and lyrics. His melodies, his chord progression, and his depictions of the world of the working cowboys of the 30s and 40s and 50s are brilliant and colorful. He wrote this for the Columbia picture Texas Stampede when the soul songwriting chores fell on his shoulders. In 1940, the Sons of the Pioneers recorded the song for their orthoacoustic radio transcriptions, and it wasn't until 1966, when Bob was long gone from the group, that they recorded it commercially on RCA. I think this ties in nicely with the song we opened with, Arizona Rain, from John Hargett. The Sons of the San Joaquin and Bob Nolan's The Boss is hanging out a rainbow.
Hi-ho, why should I be grieving? Stormy clouds are leaving. The boss is hanging out a rainbow. Hi-ho, now the grass is greener, air is cool and cleaner. The boss is hanging out a rainbow. Many days I've rode the rolling ranges, feeling every heartbeat of the west. Sun and wind and rain and many changes, but that's because the boss knows what is best. Hi-ho, why should I be grieving? Stormy clouds are leaving. The boss is hanging out a rainbow. Hi-ho, now the grass is greener, cool and cleaner. The boss is hanging out a rainbow. I saw him throw his lariat, a braided lightning strand. I saw him catch those angry clouds and burn them with his brand. Hi-ho, now the sun is blazing, hungry cattle grazing. The boss is hanging out a rainbow. I saw him throw his lariat, a braided lightning strand. I saw him catch those angry clouds and burn them with his brand. Hi-ho, now the sun is blazing, grazing, hungry cattle grazing. The boss is hanging out a rainbow. The boss is hanging out a rainbow.
He's good to ride the river with. Now that is the highest compliment that can be paid to a cowboy. And here's Tom Swearington.
That cowboy on the paint horse, a pretty darn good pard. He's been there, seen it, done it, through times both good and hard. He's been at it for some time, a good long stretch of years, rounding up calves and mamas and turning bulls to steers. He's worked in some big outfits, been bossing one or two, taught a lot of other hands a bunch of what he knew. And man, have we learned plenty about punching and much more. Getting advice a wise man be best to not ignore. Taught us what it means to be a worthy friend and hand, about love and work and honor, how to treat the land. Told us don't just do a job, you give it all you got. You only go around one time, so life's worth your best shot. He's shown us the importance of keeping our word true, that if we make a promise, do what we say we'll do. We've watched him facing hardship with determination, and no matter the outcome, show appreciation for those that stand by you, that come along aside, ride with you through the humps and cheer you through the ride. One to ride the river with, that's his reputation. The kind you can depend on in that situation. I've had the good fortune of knowing good men, the kind you can look up to and hope to see again. Not just for their achievements, although they're worth remark, but for how they live their lives, how they give a spark, kindling those around them to glow and grow and give, make the world a better place and show us how to live. I ask, please, Lord, for more friends like the one thought of now. Give me more just like them, Lord, and please, if you'll allow, a lot more years for my friend so he can show us more what it means to live with grace before the other shore.
Well, thank you so much for making the ride, and I sure hope you can join us right here next week at the same time. Again, thanks to our great support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan, and remember, if you need tractor parts, check out Mark's page, bctractorparts.com. And to subscribe to Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine, just give them a call at 1-800-943-7336. And just a quick heads up, our 17th annual Spirit of the West cruise to the Maritimes and New England is coming up in September. And you know, it won't be long before we tell you all about the 18th annual. And boy, it's going to be really something. Stay tuned. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.